The blood-red sunset painted the horizon as Sarah Valentin staggered down the dusty main street of Kearney, Nebraska, her swollen eye and split lip telling a story she'd sworn never to share again. She clutched a small leather satchel containing everything she'd managed to grab in the 3 minutes before Fletcher had passed out from whiskey. 3 years of marriage, and all she had to show for it were bruises that never fully healed and a terror that followed her like a shadow. The year was 1878, and Kearney was growing rapidly thanks to the railroad, but Sarah didn't see the prosperity around her. All she saw was a place to disappear, somewhere Fletcher might not think to look immediately. She'd made it nearly 200 miles from their homestead outside Omaha, using the last of her saved money to buy passage on freight wagons headed west. The evening chill settled around her shoulders as she stood frozen in front of the Elkhorn Hotel, her hand trembling as she counted the few coins remaining in her purse. Not enough for more than a night's lodging. Tomorrow she would need work, and Fletcher had always told her she was useless for anything but cooking and warming his bed. "Madam, you need some assistance." Sarah startled at the deep voice behind her, instinctively raising an arm to protect her face. When no blow came, she lowered her arm to see a tall man watching her with concern in his eyes. He wore a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, dusty trail clothes that had seen better days, and a Stetson pulled low over his eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered, the lie as familiar as breathing. The stranger's gaze lingered on her bruised face, but he didn't comment on it directly. "Hotel's full up. Trail crew came through this morning." He gestured down the street. "Mrs. Wilson takes in boarders at the edge of town. Decent place, fair prices." Sarah clutched her satchel tighter. "Thank you, but I'll manage." The man shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "It'll be dark soon. Not safe for a lady to be wandering." He removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair and a face weathered by sun and wind but not unkind. "Adam Yates. I work cattle for the Double Bar Ranch outside town." "Sarah," she replied, deliberately withholding her surname. "Well, Sarah, let me walk you to Mrs. Wilson's. I can vouch for you if she's hesitant about taking in a stranger after dark." Every instinct screamed to refuse to run, but exhaustion and hunger were making her decisions now. She nodded once, keeping several feet between them as they walked. "You're not from around here," Adam observed, not a question, "just passing through." Sarah kept her eyes on the dirt road ahead. "Seems most folks are these days. Railroad brings them, railroad takes them away again." They walked in silence until they reached a modest 2-story house with a small garden and a sign advertising rooms for rent. Adam knocked on the door, and a plump, gray-haired woman appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "Evening, Mrs. Wilson. This lady needs a room for the night." The older woman looked Sarah up and down, her eyes lingering on the bruises. Something unspoken passed between her and Adam before she stepped back. "I've got the back room available. $2 a week includes breakfast." Sarah's heart sank. I don't have that much." Before she could continue, Adam spoke up. "Put it on my account, Mrs. Wilson." "I'll square up with you on payday." Sarah's head jerked up. "No, I don't accept charity from strangers. Not charity. You can work it off." He turned to Mrs. Wilson. "Didn't you mention needing help with the laundry and cooking now that your arthritis is acting up?" The older woman nodded slowly. "I could use an extra pair of hands, room and board in exchange for work if you're willing." It was more than Sarah had hoped for. "I can cook and clean. I'm a hard worker." Mrs. Wilson's eyes softened slightly. "Come in then. I'll show you to your room." Adam replaced his hat. "I'll be on my way. Good evening, ladies." As he turned to leave, Sarah called out, "Mr. Yates, thank you." He tipped his hat without looking back. "Welcome to Kearney, madam." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and hook for her clothing. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed after Mrs. Wilson left, trembling with relief and fear. She'd done it. She'd run. But Fletcher would come looking eventually. He'd promised to kill her if she ever left him, and Fletcher Valentin was a man who kept his promises. That night, Sarah slept fitfully, waking at every creak and sound, certain it was Fletcher breaking down the door. By morning, exhaustion had taken its toll, and Mrs. Wilson had to knock twice to rouse her. "Breakfast in 15 minutes, the older woman called through the door. "Then I'll show you your duties." Sarah splashed cold water on her face, wincing as it touched her cuts. The swelling around her eye had gone down slightly, but the bruise had darkened to a mottled purple. She pinned up her long chestnut hair and changed into her cleanest dress before heading downstairs. The kitchen was warm and smelled of coffee and frying bacon. 3 men sat at the table, traveling salesmen, judging by their suits and sample cases. They barely glanced up as Sarah entered, for which she was grateful. Mrs. Wilson handed her a plate. "Eat, then help me serve the others. We've 5 boarders currently, plus whatever travelers come through needing a night's rest." The work was familiar enough. Sarah spent the morning helping with breakfast, then tackling the mountain of laundry that had accumulated. By afternoon, her hands were red and chapped from hot water and lye soap, but the work kept her mind occupied, away from memories of Fletcher's rage. A week passed in similar fashion. Sarah kept her head down, spoke only when necessary, and avoided going into town. Mrs. Wilson asked no questions about her past, though Sarah sometimes caught the older woman watching her with knowing eyes when she flinched at sudden noises or dropped a plate when one of the male boarders raised his voice. On her 8th day in Kearney, Sarah was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard the gate creak. She turned to see Adam Yates approaching, leading a bay horse. "Good morning, Miss Sarah," he called, keeping a respectful distance. She nodded cautiously. "Mr. Yates, I came to check if you'd settled in all right." He removed his hat, squinting against the bright morning sun, "and to see if Mrs. Wilson needed any repairs while I'm in town." "She's at the Mercantile," Sarah replied, pinning a sheet to the line. The bruises on her face had faded to yellowish shadows, but she still felt exposed under his gaze. Adam shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "Actually, I came to see you as well. Thought you might want to know there was a man asking questions at the saloon yesterday. Described a woman matching your appearance." The clothespin slipped from Sarah's suddenly numb fingers. What did he look like?" "Tall, dark-haired, expensive clothes, Eastern cut, had a scar crossing his right eyebrow." "Fletcher." The description was unmistakable, right down to the scar she'd given him with a kitchen knife when he tried to strangle her last winter. "What did you tell him?" she whispered. "Nothing. Wasn't my conversation to have." Adam stepped closer. "But others might have spoken." "Kearney's not so big that a newcomer goes unnoticed." Sarah's legs threatened to give way. "I need to leave, today, now. You got somewhere to go, family, friends?" She shook her head. She'd been disowned when she'd married Fletcher against her parents' wishes. There was nowhere and no one. "Then running blind won't help you." Adam's voice was steady. "That man, he's your husband?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. "He do that to your face?" She looked away. "I need to finish this laundry." Adam didn't move. "I've got a cabin on the double bar land. Remote, hard to find if you don't know it's there. You could stay there while you figure things out." "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, anger but not directed at her. "I know enough. Nobody deserves what's been done to you." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "He'll kill me if he finds me. He promised he would." Adam's jaw tightened. "I hope he tries." The conviction in his voice made Sarah look up. There was no bravado in his expression, just a quiet certainty that should have frightened her but somehow didn't. "I can't put you in danger," she said. "Madam, with respect, that's not your decision to make." Adam replaced his hat. "I'll be back at sundown with a horse for you. Pack whatever you need." Before she could protest further, he was gone, leaving Sarah clutching a damp sheet and wondering if she was making another terrible mistake by trusting a man she barely knew. She finished the laundry mechanically, her mind racing. Fletcher was in Kearney. He'd tracked her this far. He wouldn't stop until he found her. The thought of him bursting into Mrs. Wilson's boarding house, endangering the kind older woman and the other lodgers, made her decision easier. When Mrs. Wilson returned from town, Sarah confessed part of the truth, that her husband was looking for her, that she needed to leave before he found her. The older woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "Adam Yates is a good man. Known him since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. If he's offering help, you should take it." "What if my husband comes here looking?" Mrs. Wilson snorted. "Let him. I've dealt with worse than some city man with fancy clothes and bad manners." She patted Sarah's hand. "You go. Your job will be waiting when it's safe to return." That evening, Sarah waited nervously by the back gate with her small satchel. The sun was dipping below the horizon when Adam appeared, leading 2 horses, his bay and a gentle-looking dun mare. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded, though ready was the last thing she felt. Adam helped her mount, his hands respectful and impersonal as they adjusted the stirrups for her height. "It's about 10 miles to the cabin," he explained as they rode out of town, taking back roads and alleyways to avoid the main street. "We should get there before full dark." Sarah had ridden horses growing up, but it had been years since Fletcher had forbidden it, claiming it wasn't ladylike. The motion felt both foreign and familiar as they left the town behind and headed into the rolling grasslands beyond. They rode in silence for a time, the only sounds the creaking of saddle leather and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats. The sky deepened to indigo, stars appearing one by one. "How did you meet him?" Adam asked suddenly, Sarah startled at the question. "Fletcher. He was a business associate of my father's. Timber railroads, he seemed charming." The word tasted bitter now. "I was 18, naive. He was 30 and worldly. I thought I was in love. When did it change?" "The day after the wedding." Sarah's voice was flat. "He slapped me for spilling wine on the tablecloth. Apologized afterward, said it would never happen again. It was the first and last apology I ever received from him." Adam was quiet for a long moment. "My father was the same way with my mother. Beat her regularly until she died of pneumonia when I was 12. Always wondered if she might have survived if she hadn't been so broken down already." Sarah glanced at him, surprised by the confession. "I'm sorry. Not your burden to carry." Adam pointed ahead. "Cabin's just beyond that ridge. We'll be there soon." The cabin was small but solid, built of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney. Inside was spare but clean, a table and chairs, a bed in one corner, a cookstove, and shelves with basic provisions. "It's not much," Adam said, lighting a lantern. "I stay here when I'm working this section of the ranch. No one comes out this way much." "It's perfect," Sarah said, and meant it. After years of Fletcher's ostentatious Boston townhouse and equally showy Omaha estate, the simple cabin felt honest. Adam brought in firewood and lit the stove. "I'll sleep in the lean-to out back with the horses. There's food in the cupboard, water from the pump outside." Sarah set her satchel on the table. "Mr. Yates, Adam, please." "Adam, why are you doing this for me?" He paused at the door. "Because no one did it for my mother." The words hung in the air between them. "I'll ride back to town in the morning, see what I can find out about your husband. Try to get some rest." After he left, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, overcome with a wave of emotions, fear, exhaustion, and a tentative hope she hardly dared acknowledge. For the first time in years, she would sleep without fear of being woken by Fletcher's drunken rage. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Adam would ride out at dawn to work with the cattle or check on developments in town, returning by dusk with supplies and news. Fletcher was still in Kearney, growing increasingly belligerent as his search proved fruitless. "He's offering a $100 reward now for information," Adam reported on the fourth evening, setting a bag of flour on the table. "Sheriff's keeping an eye on him, doesn't like his attitude." Sarah needed dough for biscuits, something she'd started doing to keep her hands busy. "Fletcher doesn't respect authority unless it benefits him. He's been drinking heavily at the Frontier Saloon, making threats." Her hands stilled. "What kind of threats?" Adam hesitated. "The kind that make clear what he intends when he finds you." Sarah resumed kneading, her movements more forceful. "I should leave, go farther west, maybe California, and keep running forever." Adam sat at the table. "You didn't do anything wrong, Sarah. You don't deserve to live your life looking over your shoulder." "What choice do I have? Divorce is nearly impossible, and even if I managed it, he'd never let me go. His pride wouldn't allow it." Adam watched her shape the dough into rounds. "There are other ways to be free of a man like that." Sarah's eyes snapped to his. "I won't have blood on my hands, not even his." "I wasn't suggesting murder," Adam said mildly, "but there are men who can be convinced to disappear permanently for the right price. Or wrongdoers who sometimes meet unfortunate ends in frontier justice when their crimes become known." She set the biscuits in a pan. "I won't trade one nightmare for another." They ate dinner in companionable silence, a routine they'd established over the days. Afterward, Sarah washed the dishes while Adam checked on the horses. When he returned, she was sitting by the fire mending one of his shirts. "You don't need to do that," he said, looking uncomfortable. "I want to be useful." Sarah tied off a thread. "It helps me think." Adam sat in the chair opposite, stretching his long legs toward the fire. "What are you thinking about?" "That I've been hiding for almost 2 weeks and I can't do it forever." She set the mending aside. "I need to face Fletcher eventually, not alone." "I got myself into this mess." "No," Adam interrupted, his voice unexpectedly sharp. "He got you into this. There's a difference." Sarah studied him in the firelight. In the days they'd spent together, she'd learned that Adam Yates was a man of few words but deep convictions. He'd been born in Missouri, left home at 16 after his father had beaten him once too often, and worked his way west as a cowhand. He was 31, had never married, and seemed perfectly content with his solitary existence until she'd disrupted it. "Why did you never marry?" She asked impulsively. If the change of subject surprised him, he didn't show it. "Never met a woman who'd want the life I lead. Long hours, modest pay, moving around. Or perhaps you never let yourself look." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps." The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. Sarah found herself studying his face, the strong line of his jaw, the faint creases at the corners of his eyes, the way his hair curled slightly at the temples. She looked away quickly when he caught her gaze. "It's getting late," she said, standing. "Thank you for dinner." Adam nodded, rising as well. "I'll be gone before first light tomorrow. Cattle drive coming through from Texas and the ranch hands need all the help they can get." "Will you be gone long?" 2, maybe 3 days. He looked troubled. "I don't like leaving you alone that long." "I'll be fine," Sarah assured him, though the thought of being alone made her stomach clench with anxiety. "No one knows I'm here." Adam hesitated. "There's a rifle above the door. Do you know how to use it?" "My father taught me." Before Fletcher had taken everything from her, piece by piece, her confidence, her family connections, her very sense of self. Good. He moved toward the door. Bar the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone but me. That night, Sarah lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie, the whisper of wind through grass, the distant howl of coyotes, the occasional restless movement of the horses. She thought about Fletcher searching for her, his rage building with each passing day. And she thought about Adam, who asked for nothing but offered everything. Morning came too quickly. Sarah made coffee and biscuits before Adam departed, watching as he rode away with a small group of cowboys heading to meet the cattle drive. The cabin felt eerily quiet without his presence. She kept herself busy that day and the next cleaning, mending, organizing the small space that had become her temporary sanctuary. By the third day, restlessness drove her outside to the small garden patch behind the cabin, where she weeded and watered the struggling vegetables Adam had planted. The sun was high overhead when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Relief flooded through her. Adam was back early. She stood, brushing dirt from her skirt, a smile forming on her lips. It died instantly when she saw the rider. Fletcher Valentin sat astride his expensive black stallion, his tailored suit incongruous against the wild backdrop of the prairie. His dark hair was slicked back as always, his handsome face set in lines of fury that Sarah knew all too well. "Hello, wife," he said, his cultured voice carrying across the yard. "Did you really think I wouldn't find you?" Sarah backed toward the cabin door, her heart hammering against her ribs. The rifle was inside, useless to her now. Fletcher dismounted gracefully, tethering his horse to a post. "You've led me on quite a chase. Very inconsiderate, especially with the important business meetings I had scheduled." "How did you find me?" Sarah managed to ask, her mouth dry with terror. He smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. "Money loosens tongues. A ranch hand with gambling debts saw your cowboy friend buying women's supplies in town. Wasn't hard to follow him back to his employer's land and ask a few questions." Fletcher adjusted his cuffs, a gesture Sarah had come to dread. It always preceded violence. "Now be a good wife and pack your things. We're leaving." "No." The word was barely audible even to her own ears. Fletcher's eyebrows rose. "I beg your pardon." Sarah swallowed hard, forcing her voice stronger. "I said no. I'm not going with you," he laughed, the sound chilling her blood. "Oh, Sarah, still the same foolish girl." He stepped closer. "You seem to be under the misapprehension that you have a choice. You don't. You're my wife. You belong to me. By law, by God, and by the vows you spoke." "Vows that said you would cherish and protect me," Sarah countered, edging toward the door. "You broke them first, Fletcher." His face darkened. "Is that what you told your cowboy lover? That I was cruel to you? Poor, mistreated Sarah, when all I ever did was try to make you into a proper wife." Another step closer. "Did you spread your legs for him in my bed? It's not like that. Adam is Adam," Fletcher spat the name. "You're on a first-name basis with your paramour. How charming." His hand shot out, grabbing her arm with bruising force. "I should kill him for touching what's mine." Sarah struggled against his grip. "Let go of me." Fletcher's other hand cracked across her face, the force of the blow sending her sprawling to the ground. Blood filled her mouth where her teeth had cut into her cheek. "Get up," he commanded. "I won't drag you all the way back to Omaha." Sarah pushed herself to her knees, tasting blood and dirt. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard the distinctive sound of a rifle being cocked. "Step away from her." Adam's voice was cold as steel. Fletcher turned slowly. Adam sat on his horse 20 yards away, rifle aimed steadily at Fletcher's chest. "This doesn't concern you, cowboy," Fletcher said dismissively. "This woman is my wife, and I'm taking her home. She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go." Adam dismounted, keeping the rifle trained on Fletcher. "Sarah, are you all right?" She nodded, rising shakily to her feet. Fletcher's eyes darted between them, his expression calculating. "I see how it is." He smiled thinly at Sarah. "You found yourself a champion. How romantic." He turned back to Adam. "Do you know what the penalty is for adultery with another man's wife, or for interfering with a husband's rightful authority?" "You know what the penalty is in these parts for beating a woman," Adam countered. "It's usually administered at the end of a rope." Fletcher's hand moved toward his coat and Sarah cried out in warning. "He's armed." Adam's rifle didn't waver. "Don't try it, Valentin. I've got no desire to kill you, but I will if you force my hand." For a tense moment, Fletcher seemed to consider his options. Then he slowly raised his hands. "Very well. It seems I'm at a disadvantage for the moment." His cold eyes fixed on Sarah. "But this isn't over. A wife belongs with her husband. The law is on my side." "The law doesn't look kindly on men who beat women in Nebraska territory," Adam said. "Now mount up and ride back to town." "Don't stop, don't look back." Fletcher's face contorted with rage. "You think this is the end? I'll have the sheriff out here by nightfall. I'll have you arrested for kidnapping and theft of my property." "I'm not property," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she expected. "And I left of my own free will. We'll see what the judge has to say about that." Fletcher mounted his horse with elegant ease, looking down at them with contempt. "I'll be waiting in town, Sarah. When your cowboy hero isn't around to protect you, you'll remember where you belong." With that, he wheeled his horse around and galloped away. As soon as he was out of sight, Sarah's legs gave way. She sank to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Adam was at her side instantly, setting the rifle aside. "Are you hurt? Did he—" "Just my face. I'm all right." She wasn't, not really, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the terror gripping her. "He'll be back, with the law on his side." Adam helped her to her feet, his touch gentle. "Let's get you inside. We need to move quickly." In the cabin, he helped her pack her few belongings while explaining his plan. "The cattle drive is headed to Wyoming territory. If we leave now, we can catch up to them by nightfall. You can travel with them as far as Cheyenne." "And then what?" Sarah asked, despair threatening to overwhelm her. "He'll follow. He'll never stop." Adam paused, his expression grave. "There's another option. The ranch foreman owes me a favor. He's willing to say I've been working the cattle drive for the past 2 weeks, never left his sight. Mrs. Wilson will swear you left her boarding house the day after you arrived, headed for California. Lies won't stop Fletcher for long. They might buy us enough time." Adam hesitated. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Do you want to be free of him? Truly free?" "More than anything. Even if it means never going back to your old life, never seeing your family again." Sarah laughed bitterly. "What family? What life? Fletcher isolated me from everyone and everything I ever cared about. There's nothing to go back to." Adam nodded as if her answer confirmed something for him. "Then we have one chance. We ride north across the border into Dakota territory, find a settlement where no one knows us, start over." "As what, fugitives? As husband and wife?" Sarah stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What?" Adam's face flushed, but he held her gaze. "A marriage certificate with my name on it would make Fletcher's claims more complicated. Bigamy is illegal everywhere. It would be in name only," he added hastily. I wouldn't expect." "You'd marry me to protect me," Sarah whispered. "I'd marry you because I've grown to care for you," Adam said simply. "But I understand if the idea repulses you. After what you've been through, it doesn't repulse me." The realization surprised her as she spoke it aloud. "But I can't ask you to sacrifice your future for me." "You're not asking, I'm offering." He took her hand cautiously. "Sarah, I've lived my life alone and been content with it, but these past weeks having you here, it's shown me what I've been missing. I'm not Fletcher. I don't want to own you. I just want a chance to build something with you, if you're willing." Sarah looked at their joined hands, his large and work roughened, her smaller but equally calloused now from days of manual labor. So different from Fletcher's soft, manicured hands that had never known an honest day's work. "We barely know each other," she said. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you make biscuits when you're anxious and hum when you think no one's listening. I know you deserve better than what life has given you so far." Adam's voice was low and earnest. "The rest we can learn together. If you want to." Sarah's mind raced. It was madness fleeing with a man she'd known less than a month, starting a new life built on deception. And yet, for the first time in years, she felt something like hope. "Yes," she said finally. "I'll go with you." Relief flooded Adam's face. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. "We need to leave immediately. Fletcher will be back with the sheriff soon." They packed hurriedly food, clothing, Adam's tools and rifle, the small amount of money he had saved. Within an hour they were mounted and riding north, away from Kearney, away from Fletcher, toward an uncertain future. The journey was grueling. They rode hard that first day, stopping only to rest the horses, constantly looking over their shoulders for pursuit. By nightfall, they had crossed into Dakota territory, making camp in a sheltered ravine. As Sarah stirred a pot of beans over the small fire, Adam kept watch, rifle across his knees. "We should reach Yankton in 3 days if the weather holds," he said. "We can be legally married there, get papers that would stand up to scrutiny." "Will it be enough?" Sarah asked. "Fletcher has money, influence. His influence doesn't extend as far up here, and money only goes so far in the territories." Adam's expression hardened. "Besides, a man like that makes enemies. I doubt his business practices are entirely above board. If he pursues us, he risks exposure." Sarah wanted to believe him, but years with Fletcher had taught her that power and wealth could overcome almost any obstacle. Still, she said nothing, unwilling to dim the cautious hope in Adam's eyes. They slept in shifts that night, neither fully resting. By dawn they were riding again, following game trails and avoiding the main roads where they might be spotted. On the third day, rain began to fall, a steady, soaking downpour that turned the trail to mud and slowed their progress to a crawl. By afternoon they were both drenched and miserable, the horses struggling in the increasingly treacherous conditions. "We need shelter," Adam called over the drumming rain. "There's an old trapper's cabin a few miles ahead. We can wait out the worst of it there." The cabin was little more than a shack, a single room with a sagging roof and gaps between the wall logs that let in drafts. But it was dry, with a stone fireplace and a stack of firewood left by the previous occupant. Adam tended to the horses in the lean-to while Sarah built a fire, her fingers stiff with cold. When he returned, he was carrying their sodden bedrolls and saddlebags. "Storm's getting worse," he reported, hanging their wet clothing near the fire. "We'll have to stay the night." Sarah nodded, trying to hide her shivering. Her dress was plastered to her skin, her hair hanging in wet ropes down her back. Adam noticed and frowned. "You need to get out of those wet clothes. You'll catch your death." He turned his back, giving her privacy. "I've got a spare shirt in my bag. It's probably damp too, but better than what you're wearing." Sarah changed quickly, grateful for his discretion. The shirt hung to her knees, the sleeves rolled up several times. It smelled of leather and horses and Adam himself, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. "You can turn around now," she said. Adam had removed his own sodden shirt, standing bare-chested by the fire. Sarah averted her eyes, feeling heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the flames. "I'm sorry about the accommodations," he said, unaware of her discomfort. "Not exactly what you're used to, I imagine." Actually, it reminds me of the cabin where I grew up, Sarah admitted, surprising herself with the memory. My father was a timber scout before he made his fortune. We lived in a place not much bigger than this until I was 8. Adam looked at her with interest. You never mentioned that. Fletcher didn't approve of that part of my history. He preferred people to think I came from old money, not a father who built his business from nothing. She ran a hand along the rough-hewn table. I was happier in that cabin than I ever was in our mansion in Boston. Outside, thunder rumbled and rain lashed against the small window. Adam spread their bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, maintaining a respectful distance. Try to get some sleep, he suggested. I'll take first watch. Sarah lay down, pulling the damp blanket around her shoulders. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. She was acutely aware of Adam sitting across the fire, his profile outlined by the dancing flames. Adam, she said after a long silence. He turned toward her. Yes. Why did you help me that first day in Kearney? You could have just walked past like everyone else did. Adam was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, You reminded me of my mother, not in looks but in the way you held yourself, like you were trying to disappear. He poked at the fire with a stick. I was too young to help her, but I wasn't too young to help you. I'm glad you did. Sarah propped herself up on one elbow. I'm not sure I would have survived much longer with Fletcher. You're stronger than you think. You would have found a way, maybe. But I'm grateful I didn't have to do it alone. She hesitated. Adam, this plan of ours, if it doesn't work, if Fletcher finds us, he won't. But if he does, I don't want you to face him alone. He's dangerous, more than you know. Adam's expression hardened. I meant what I said back at the cabin. If he comes for you again, he'll have to go through me first, and I don't intend to make it easy for him. The conviction in his voice warmed something deep inside Sarah. For 3 years, no one had protected her, fought for her. She'd been alone in her fear and pain. Now this man, this stranger who was rapidly becoming something else entirely, was willing to risk everything for her safety. Thank you, she whispered. Adam nodded once, then gestured to her bedroll. Sleep now. We've got a long ride ahead tomorrow. This time, Sarah slept, lulled by the steady rhythm of the rain and the comforting presence of Adam across the fire. Morning brought clearing skies and renewed determination. They reached Yankton 2 days later, a growing town that served as the territorial capital. Its bustling streets and brick buildings were a stark contrast to the wilderness they'd traveled through. We should find a preacher first, Adam suggested as they rode into town. Then secure lodgings. You'll need proper clothing if we're to convince people we're a respectable married couple. Sarah nodded, suddenly nervous. The reality of what they were doing, the legal and moral complications, weighed heavily on her. Adam, are you certain about this? Marriage is binding. If we go through with it, you'll be tied to me, to my problems. He reined his horse to a stop, turning to face her. Sarah, I've thought about little else these past days. I know what I'm offering and what I'm risking. The question is whether you're certain. I won't hold you to anything said in desperation back at that cabin. She studied his face, honest, weathered, concerned. Not handsome in the classical way Fletcher was, but appealing in its strength and integrity. In the short time she'd known him, Adam had shown her more genuine care than Fletcher had in 3 years of marriage. I'm certain, she said, but there's something you should know first. She took a deep breath. Fletcher and I, we never had children. He blamed me, but the doctor said the problem might be with him. If you're hoping for a family, Sarah, Adam interrupted gently, I've lived 31 years without children. If we're blessed with them someday, I'll be grateful. If not, having you would be enough. His words dissolved the last of her reservations. Then let's find that preacher. They were married that afternoon in the small Lutheran church at the edge of town, with the pastor's wife and the church caretaker as witnesses. Sarah wore a simple blue dress purchased hastily from a dry goods store, and Adam had shaved and donned a clean shirt for the occasion. The ceremony was brief, the words familiar yet strange coming from her lips a second time. When Adam slipped a plain gold band onto her finger purchased from a jeweler on Main Street, with most of his savings, his hands trembled slightly. "With this ring, I thee wed," he said, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. The pastor pronounced them husband and wife, and Adam hesitated only a moment before leaning down to place a chaste kiss on Sarah's lips. It was their first, and the gentle pressure of his mouth against hers sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. They took a room at a modest hotel near the church, both of them awkward as they entered the small space with its single bed. Adam set their bags down, clearing his throat. "I'll sleep on the floor," he said immediately. "You take the bed." Sarah twisted the unfamiliar ring on her finger. "Adam, I don't expect you to. I meant what I said before. This marriage is for your protection. Nothing more is expected." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "When we find a place to settle, we can arrange separate sleeping quarters." A small part of Sarah was relieved, while another part felt strangely disappointed. She pushed the conflicting emotions aside. "Thank you for everything." They spent a week in Yankton, establishing themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Adam Yates, newly arrived from Nebraska. Adam found temporary work at the livery stable while they decided where to settle permanently. "The Black Hills are booming with the gold rush," he mentioned over dinner one evening. "Lots of opportunity for a man willing to work hard, or we could head to Montana Territory. I hear the ranching is good there." "I'd prefer somewhere settled," Sarah admitted. "Not a mining camp." Adam nodded. "Montana, then. The Gallatin Valley is supposed to be fertile, good for farming and ranching both." The decision made, they prepared for the journey west. Adam purchased a small wagon and supplies while Sarah acquired the necessities for establishing a household. To anyone watching, they appeared to be just another young couple seeking their fortune on the frontier. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Twice she thought she glimpsed a familiar figure on the street, only to find a stranger when she looked more carefully. The fear that Fletcher might have tracked them to Yankton grew stronger each day. "We should leave soon," she told Adam one evening. "Tomorrow, if possible." He studied her face, concern in his eyes. "You've seen something?" "No, just a feeling." She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd developed. "Fletcher has connections. He could have telegraphed descriptions to law enforcement throughout the territory." Adam considered this. "The supplies are nearly ready. We can leave at first light." They departed Yankton before dawn, their wagon loaded with the tools and provisions they would need to start a new life. Sarah sat beside Adam on the driver's seat, watching the town disappear behind them with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "It's nearly 500 miles to the Gallatin Valley," Adam said as they followed the trail northwest. "The journey won't be easy, especially as winter approaches." Sarah nodded, her eyes on the horizon. "We'll manage." The first week passed uneventfully. They settled into a routine, rising at dawn, traveling until midday, resting the horses during the hottest hours, then continuing until dusk. At night, they made camp beside the trail, Adam sleeping under the wagon while Sarah took the bed they'd created in the wagon bed. Gradually, the awkwardness between them began to ease. They talked during the long hours on the trail, Adam sharing stories of his years as a cowhand, Sarah speaking hesitantly of her childhood before Fletcher. In the evenings, they worked together preparing meals, caring for the horses, setting up camp. On the 10th day, they encountered another wagon train heading west, families bound for Oregon country. The leader, a weathered farmer named Silas Jenkins, invited them to travel together for safety. Indians have been restless lately, he explained. Strength in numbers. Adam looked to Sarah, leaving the decision to her. She nodded her agreement and they joined the small caravan of 7 wagons. That night, camped in a circle with the other families, Sarah found herself drawn into conversation with the women while Adam talked cattle and crops with the men. "How long have you two been married?" asked Martha Jenkins, a motherly woman with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Just a few weeks," Sarah replied, the half-truth coming easily now. "Newlyweds. No wonder you only have eyes for each other." Martha chuckled. "My Silas and I have been married 30 years come December. 6 children, 12 grandchildren." "That's wonderful," Sarah said sincerely, ignoring the pang in her chest at the thought of children she might never have. "You'll have your own soon enough," Martha predicted, misreading Sarah's expression. "Strong young couple like you two." Across the fire, Adam looked up as if sensing her discomfort. Their eyes met, and he offered a small, reassuring smile that warmed Sarah more than the flames. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Sarah found herself reluctant to retreat to the wagon alone. "It's going to be cold tonight," she observed, watching Adam spread his bedroll beneath the wagon. "I'll be fine," he assured her. "Got an extra blanket from Jenkins." Sarah hesitated, gathering her courage. "Adam, we've been married almost 3 weeks now, in name at least." He straightened, watching her carefully. "Yes, I'm not suggesting that is." She took a deep breath. "Maybe it's time we stopped pretending this is only an arrangement of convenience." Adam's expression remained carefully neutral. "Sarah, you don't owe me anything. Certainly not. It's not about owing." She stepped closer, close enough to see the firelight reflected in his eyes. "It's about choosing. For once in my life, making my own choice about who I share myself with." His breath caught audibly. "Are you certain? After everything you've been through with him, that's precisely why I'm certain." Sarah reached out hesitantly, placing her hand on his chest. "Fletcher took so much from me. My dignity, my self-worth, my choices. I don't want him to take this too, the possibility of something real with someone who actually cares for me." Adam covered her hand with his own. "I more than care for you, Sarah." The words were rough with emotion. "These past weeks, watching you grow stronger every day, seeing your courage. I've fallen in love with you, but I never wanted to pressure you." The declaration hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness or fear, but from an overwhelming sense of possibility. "I think," she said softly, "I might be falling in love with you too." Adam's free hand came up to cradle her cheek. "May I kiss you, properly this time?" Sarah nodded, and he lowered his mouth to hers. This kiss was nothing like their brief contact during the wedding ceremony. It was gentle at first, tentative, then deepening as Sarah responded. His lips were warm and slightly chapped from the trail, his beard rough against her skin, but the tenderness in his touch made her heart race. When they parted, both breathing unsteadily, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure about this?" In answer, Sarah took his hand and led him toward the wagon. That night, for the first time, they truly became husband and wife, their joining gentle and reverent, nothing like the brutal encounters she'd endured with Fletcher. Adam's hands and lips coaxed responses from her body she hadn't known were possible. And when they lay together afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Sarah felt something inside her healing. The wagon train continued westward, crossing into Montana territory, as autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds. Sarah and Adam's relationship deepened with each passing day, their initial arrangement of convenience transforming into a genuine partnership built on growing love and mutual respect. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Sarah admitted one evening as they sat by their campfire, slightly apart from the main group. "After Fletcher, I was certain that part of me was dead forever." Adam took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Sometimes the heart needs time to heal before it can love again." He smiled slightly. "I never thought I'd marry at all. Always figured I'd end my days as a solitary old cowhand. Are you disappointed that your life took this turn? Disappointed?" Adam looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Sarah, meeting you is the best thing that ever happened to me. Even with all the complications and dangers, I wouldn't trade what we have for anything." She leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she'd never imagined possible. "I feel the same." As they neared the Gallatin Valley, the Jenkins family and others prepared to continue to Oregon, while Adam and Sarah made plans to settle in the growing community near Fort Ellis. "Land is still available for homesteading," Adam explained. 160 acres if we file a claim. We could build a cabin before winter sets in, start with a few head of cattle in the spring." The future stretched before them, full of hard work but also promise. For the first time since she'd fled Fletcher, Sarah allowed herself to truly believe she might be free. They parted from the wagon train with promises to write and well wishes from their traveling companions. The Gallatin Valley welcomed them with spectacular mountain views and rich bottomland along the river, perfect for the small ranch Adam envisioned. "What do you think?" he asked as they stood on a rise overlooking a meadow bordered by cottonwoods, the Bridger Mountains rising majestically in the distance. Sarah turned in a slow circle, taking in the beauty surrounding them. "It's perfect." They filed their claim at Fort Ellis the next day, then set about the hard work of establishing their homestead before winter. Adam felled trees and began construction on a cabin while Sarah planted a late garden and preserved what wild berries and game they could find. The cabin took shape gradually, one room at first, with a stone fireplace and a proper bed built by Adam's hands. They moved in before the walls were fully chinked, grateful for solid roof overhead as the first snow dusted the mountains. "It's not much," Adam apologized as they sat before the fire on their first night in the unfinished cabin. "Not what you were used to in Boston." Sarah looked around at the rough-hewn logs, the simple furnishings, the floor that still needed proper boards. "It's more a home than any mansion Fletcher provided," she said honestly, "because we're building it together." Winter in Montana was harsh but beautiful. Snowdrifts piled against the cabin walls, and on the coldest nights they huddled together beneath every blanket they possessed. Adam trapped and hunted when weather permitted, while Sarah kept their home, sewing by firelight and preparing for spring planting. In those quiet months of isolation, their bond deepened further. Sarah found herself sharing stories of her life with Fletcher that she'd never spoken aloud before: the humiliations, the pain, the constant fear. Adam listened without judgment, holding her when words failed. In turn, he opened up about his own past, the childhood marked by his father's violence, the years of drifting from ranch to ranch, never staying long enough to form attachments. "I was afraid of becoming like him," Adam confessed one night. "Thought it might be in my blood somehow. That's why I never sought out a wife, never wanted children." "You're nothing like him," Sarah assured him, her hand resting on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. "You're kind and patient and gentle. With you, it's easy to be those things." He kissed her forehead. "You make me want to be a better man." Spring came late to the high country, but when it arrived, it transformed their valley into a paradise of wildflowers and new growth. Adam added a second room to the cabin and built corrals for the horses, and the small herd of cattle they purchased from a neighboring rancher. Sarah expanded her garden and started a flock of chickens, reveling in the simple rhythms of frontier life. They worked from dawn to dusk most days, falling into bed exhausted but satisfied with their progress. By summer, their homestead was taking shape, fields fenced, cabin improved, livestock healthy. They made occasional trips to the growing settlement near Fort Ellis for supplies and news of the outside world. It was during one of these trips in late August that Sarah's worst fear materialized. They had separated briefly, Adam to purchase fencing supplies, Sarah to select fabric for curtains at the general store. She was examining a bolt of calico when a voice behind her stopped her heart. "Hello, Sarah. You're looking well." She turned slowly, already knowing what she would see. Fletcher Valentin stood just inside the store entrance, immaculately dressed as always, his dark eyes cold with triumph. "How did you find me?" The question emerged as barely more than a whisper. Fletcher smiled thinly. "Money, my dear. It opens all doors, loosens all tongues." Even in the wilds of Montana territory. He glanced around the small store. "Where is your cowboy? I've been looking forward to meeting the man who stole my wife." Sarah's mind raced. Adam was across the street at the lumberyard. If she could delay Fletcher, warn Adam somehow. "He's not here," she said, forcing her voice steady. "We're separated." Fletcher's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Already? How disappointing. Did he discover what I knew all along, that you're worthless as a wife?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Did you really think Big Emmy would protect you from me? All it did was give me grounds to have you both arrested." The storekeeper approached, concerned by Fletcher's aggressive stance. "Everything all right, Mrs. Yates?" Fletcher's eyes narrowed at the name, but he smiled charmingly at the older man. "Just reuniting with an old friend. Would you excuse us?" The storekeeper looked to Sarah, who managed a nod. "I'm fine, Mr. Thompson, thank you." When they were alone again, Fletcher gripped Sarah's arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. "We're leaving now. My carriage is outside. If you make a scene, I'll see your cowboy hang for kidnapping and bigamy. Understand?" Sarah's legs felt like water, but she straightened her spine. "No, no," Fletcher's grip tightened. "Perhaps you didn't hear me clearly. I heard you." Sarah pulled her arm free with a strength that surprised them both. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Fletcher, ever again." Fury darkened his features. "You stupid, ungrateful." He raised his hand to strike her, but before the blow could fall, a larger hand caught his wrist. "That would be a mistake," Adam said quietly, his voice carrying more menace than a shout. Fletcher whirled to face him, yanking his arm free. "So you're the thief who took my property." Adam positioned himself between Fletcher and Sarah. "Sarah isn't property, she's my wife. Legally, she's still mine." Fletcher straightened his jacket. "Our marriage was never dissolved. Yours is invalid, a criminal act, in fact." "That's so." Adam's expression remained calm, but Sarah recognized the tension in his shoulders. "Funny thing about the law out here, it tends to favor those who work the land, build communities, not Eastern dandies who beat women." Fletcher's hand moved toward his jacket, and Sarah realized with horror that he was reaching for a concealed weapon. "Adam," before she could finish the warning, Fletcher had drawn a small derringer from an inside pocket. "I came prepared for resistance," he said coldly. "Step aside, cowboy." "She's returning to Omaha with me today." The store had emptied of other customers, leaving only the three of them and the storekeeper, who was edging toward a shotgun kept behind the counter. "Think carefully about what you're doing, Valentin," Adam said, not moving from his protective stance in front of Sarah. "Pulling a gun in broad daylight won't end well for you." Fletcher's smile was terrible to behold. "Perhaps not." but I'll have the satisfaction of removing you from my wife's life permanently." He aimed the derringer at Adam's chest. "Any last words?" Everything happened in a blur. The storekeeper shouted a warning. Adam lunged forward as the derringer fired. Sarah screamed, certain she was about to watch her husband die, but it was Fletcher who stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, blood blossoming on his expensive jacket. Behind him stood Sheriff Donovan, his revolver still raised. "Drop the weapon, mister," the sheriff commanded. Fletcher's derringer clattered to the floor. "He attacked me," he gasped, clutching his wound. "This man stole my wife. I was defending myself." Sheriff Donovan's weathered face showed no sympathy. "Saw the whole thing through the window. You drew first." He holstered his weapon and pulled out handcuffs. "Fletcher Valentin, got a telegraph from Omaha about you. Seems you're wanted for questioning about some financial irregularities at your company. Embezzlement, they're calling it." The color drained from Fletcher's face. "That's absurd." "I'm a respected businessman, save it for the judge." The sheriff cuffed him despite his injury. "Doctor can see to that shoulder at the jail. Then you'll be heading back to Nebraska under guard." As the sheriff led Fletcher away, Sarah sagged against Adam, her legs finally giving way. He caught her, holding her upright. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "It's finally over." Later, after giving statements to the sheriff and learning the full story how Fletcher's business partners had discovered his embezzlement during his obsessive pursuit of Sarah, how warrants had been issued for his arrest throughout the territories, they sat together on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "I can file for divorce now," Sarah said quietly. With Fletcher facing prison, no judge would deny it. Adam took her hand, running his thumb over the simple gold band he'd placed there. "And then," she turned to him, reading the uncertainty in his eyes, "and then I'll marry you again. Properly this time, legally." Relief washed over his features. "You still want that, after everything?" "Adam Yates," Sarah said, placing her hand against his cheek. "The past months with you have been the happiest of my life, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty. You've shown me what real love is: patient, kind, respectful. Of course I still want to be your wife. I want it more than anything." He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were something infinitely precious. "I love you, Sarah, more than I ever thought possible. I love you too." The words came easily now, freely given rather than coerced. They stayed on the porch until the stars appeared, making plans for their future, expanding the ranch, possibly adopting children who needed homes, building a life together on the land they'd claimed. 6 months later, they stood before the same minister who had married them in Yankton, now established in the growing town near Fort Ellis. Sarah wore a new dress of blue silk, and Adam had splurged on a proper suit for the occasion. Their neighbors and new friends filled the small church, witnesses to a union that was now both legal and deeply rooted in genuine love. "You may kiss your bride," the minister said, smiling at the couple who had already weathered more storms than most. Adam's lips met Sarah's in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, not as fugitives bound by necessity, but as partners who had chosen each other freely and completely. That night, in their expanded cabin with its polished floors and curtained windows, Sarah laid her head on Adam's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Coming to my rescue that day in Kearney?" Adam's arms tightened around her. "Not for a single moment." "Best decision I ever made." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing their land in pristine white. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Sarah and Adam were warm, safe, and finally truly home. Over the next 5 years, the Yates ranch prospered. Adam's knowledge of cattle and Sarah's careful management of their finances allowed them to expand their holdings to nearly 500 acres. They built a larger house, still modest compared to what Sarah had known with Fletcher, but comfortable and welcoming, filled with laughter and love. News reached them occasionally of Fletcher. He had been convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 10 years in a Nebraska prison. The divorce had been granted in his absence, freeing Sarah completely from her past. Their greatest joy came in the spring of 1884, when Sarah discovered she was expecting their first child. The pregnancy that doctors had deemed impossible with Fletcher progressed smoothly, and in December, she gave birth to a healthy son they named William, after Adam's maternal grandfather. 2 years later, twin girls joined their family, Elizabeth and Margaret, completing their happiness. The children grew strong and vibrant in the Montana wilderness, learning to ride almost before they could walk, helping with ranch chores as they grew older. On the 10th anniversary of their first meeting in Kearney, Adam surprised Sarah with a gold locket containing miniature portraits of their children. As he fastened it around her neck, he whispered, "Thank you for taking a chance on a dusty cowboy all those years ago." Sarah turned in his arms, studying the face that had become dearer to her than any other, now lined with a decade of Montana weather and parenthood, but still handsome in her eyes. "I didn't take a chance," she corrected him, brushing her lips against his. "I made the best decision of my life." Together, they stood on the porch of the home they had built, watching their children play in the shadow of the mountains, secure in the knowledge that the love they had found amid danger and uncertainty had only grown stronger with each passing year. What had begun as an act of protection had become the foundation for a life neither had dared to dream possible, one built on respect, partnership, and a love that had overcome every obstacle placed in its path.